Imagine a man with billions hidden in his name, walking the dusty streets of a bustling African city, dressed in rags, his family oblivious to his secret. What happens when a wealthy titan pretends to be a pauper to test the hearts of those he loves most? Stay tuned, because this tale of loyalty, betrayal, and a wife's shocking choice will leave you in tears. Welcome, story lovers, to Kelly Stories, a tale as old as the baobab trees, yet as fresh as the morning markets of Lagos. Today, we dive into a story set in the heart of a thriving urban kingdom where skyscrapers kiss the sky and the wisdom of ancestors still whispers through the wind. This is the story of Adebayo, a billionaire who traded his suits for tattered cloth to test his family's love. But what his wife Nia did in the end. Oh, it's a twist that'll grip your soul. Grab your tea, settle in, and let's journey together into this rich, emotional saga. In the heart of Adekunle City, where glass towers gleamed like the sun and the streets pulsed with the rhythm of life, lived Adebayo Ogunlai, a man whose wealth could buy the stars. His name was whispered in boardrooms and sung in the markets, for he owned half the city's trade gold mines, tech empires, and shipping fleets that stretched across the ocean. But Adebayo was no ordinary billionaire. Beneath his tailored agbada and polished shoes beat the heart of a storyteller, raised on the tales of his grandmother, Mama Ireti, who taught him that true riches lay not in gold, but in the loyalty of those you call family. As the years rolled by, Adebayo grew restless, his mind heavy with a question. Did his wife, Nia, and their 3 children love him for his soul or for the wealth that draped their lives in silk? One night, under a moon as full as a ripe mango, he sat by the ancestral shrine in his mansion, the flickering oil lamp casting shadows on the carved masks of his forefathers. "Show me their hearts," he prayed, and the wind carried his words into the night. By morning, a daring plan had taken root, a test born of love and suspicion, a masquerade that would peel back the masks of his family. He would shed his riches, become a beggar in their eyes, and see who would stand by him when the gold was gone. The city of Adekunle buzzed unaware as Adebayo set his scheme in motion. He called his trusted friend, Chike, a lawyer with eyes sharp as a hawk, and handed him the keys to his empire. "Hold my wealth in secret," he said, "and let no one know I am still the king beneath these rags." Chike nodded, his brow furrowed, but he knew Adebayo's heart was guided by the wisdom of the ancients. That day, Adebayo traded his silk for a threadbare shirt, his leather shoes for cracked sandals, and stepped into the streets as a stranger. The hawkers who once bowed to him now shooed him away, and the guards at his own gates didn't recognize the man they'd served for decades. He carried a worn sack, his only companion, and wandered toward his family's grand compound, a palace of marble and glass nestled in the city's wealthiest quarter. His chest tightened as he knocked on the gate, the sound echoing like a drumbeat of fate. Nia, his wife of 20 years, opened the door, her eyes narrowing at the sight of this ragged figure. "Adebayo?" she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. He nodded, spinning a tale of ruined debts, lost ships, a fortune swallowed by the sea. The test had begun, and the city held its breath. Nia stood frozen at the gate, her wrapper slipping slightly as she clutched her chest. The woman who'd once danced with Adebayo under chandeliers now stared at a ghost of the man she'd married. Her eyes, sharp as a tailor's needle, scanned his torn clothes, the dirt smudged on his cheeks, and the sack slung over his shoulder. "How did this happen?" she demanded, her voice a mix of shock and something deeper fear, perhaps, or shame. Adebayo lowered his gaze, spinning his tale of misfortune with the skill of a griot. He spoke of storms sinking his ships, creditors seizing his mines, and a fire that razed his warehouses to ash. The children Kemi, Tolu, and little Sade peeked from behind their mother, their faces a gallery of confusion. Kemi, the eldest at 19, flipped her braids and scoffed, "Papa, you look like a beggar from Oshodi Market." Tolu, 16 and proud, crossed his arms, his new sneakers gleaming as he muttered, "This can't be real." Sade, just 8, clung to Nia's leg, her wide eyes brimming with tears. The air grew thick with unspoken questions, and Adebayo felt the first sting of their doubt pierce his heart. Inside the compound, the family gathered in the parlor, a room once alive with laughter and the clink of crystal glasses. Now, it felt like a courtroom. Naya paced, her bangles jangling like a warning bell. "If all is lost, what do we do now?" she asked, her tone sharp as a machete. Adebayo sat on a stool, his billionaire's posture hidden beneath a slump, and said, "We start anew, together." But the word "together" hung heavy, unclaimed. Kemi rolled her eyes, already texting her friends about the family disgrace. Tolu kicked at the rug, muttering about his cancelled trip to Dubai. Said alone crept closer, her small hand brushing Adebayo's calloused fingers. "Papa, are we poor now?" she whispered, and his throat tightened. Nia stopped pacing, her gaze locking onto his. "We'll figure this out," she said. But her voice lacked warmth, and Adebayo wondered if the ancestors were watching, their wisdom guiding this unraveling thread. The family he'd built his empire for now stood divided, and the test stretched before him like a river swollen with rain. Word of Adebayo's fall spread through Adekunle City faster than a hawk chasing prey. By noon, the markets buzzed with gossip-hawkers paused, mid-shout, their trays of groundnuts trembling as they whispered, "Ogunlai has lost it all." In the high-rise offices, men in suits shook their heads, their coffee cooling as they mourned the Titan's ruin. Even the Okada riders, weaving through traffic, shouted the news to one another, their voices rising above the honks and hum of the city. Adebayo walked these streets, his ears catching every murmur, his heart a drumbeat of hope and dread. He passed the goldsmiths who'd once crafted rings for his fingers, now turning their backs as if poverty were a plague. The sun beat down, painting the asphalt in waves of heat, and he felt the weight of his disguise grow heavier. Yet he pressed on, determined to see his test through, the ancestral voices in his mind urging patience. At home, the whispers crept into the compound like termites. Neighbors who'd once begged for Adebayo's favor now peered over the fence, their eyes glinting with pity or scorn. Naya faced them at the gate, her chin high, but her hands trembled as she shooed them away. "Mind your business," she snapped, though her voice cracked like dry earth. Inside, Kemi locked herself in her room, her phone a lifeline to a world that now mocked her. Tolu stormed out, refusing to be seen with a beggar father, while Saad drew pictures of happier days Papa in a suit, the family smiling under a mango tree. Adebayo watched it all, silent as a shadow, his billionaire's mind cataloging every word, every glance. The city's judgment was a mirror, reflecting his family's true colors, and he wondered how long their Louvre lack of it could hide. The ancestors, he felt, were weaving a lesson into this chaos, one he'd carry to his grave. The days stretched long in Adekunle City, each sunrise painting the skyline in hues of gold and amber. Yet for Adebayo, the light felt dim. His family's compound, once a beacon of pride, now echoed with silence and scorn. Nia moved through the house like a storm trapped in a bottle, her hands wringing the hem of her wrapper as she barked orders at the maids who now whispered behind her back, their loyalty fraying like old cloth. Kemi refused to leave her room, her once loud laughter replaced by the tap-tap of her phone, plotting an escape from this disgrace. Tolu took to the streets, his swagger diminished, avoiding the eyes of friends who now jeered at his father's fall. Little Sade, though, stayed close to Adebayo, her small voice asking, "Papa, will we ever be happy again?" He smiled, brushing her braids, but his heart ached. Her innocence was a thread of hope in a tapestry unraveling fast. The city's judgment pressed against the compound walls, and Adebayo felt the ancestors watching, their silent counsel urging him to hold fast. This test, he knew, was not just for his family, but for him to see if he could bear the shame he'd invited. Nia's patience wore thin as the whispers grew louder. One evening, as the crickets sang and the city lights flickered like stars, she cornered Adebayo in the courtyard. "How long must we live like this?" she hissed, her eyes blazing. "The neighbors laugh, the children hide, and I am tired of pretending." Adebayo met her gaze, his voice steady as a river stone. "We have each other," he said, but the words felt hollow even to him. Naya turned away, her bangles clinking like a dirge, and he saw the crack in her resolve widen. She began selling off trinkets, gold earrings, a beaded purse claiming it was for food, but her eyes darted too quickly, her excuses too sharp. Adebayo watched, his billionaire's mind piecing together her actions, wondering if greed or survival drove her now. The ancestral shrine glowed faintly in the corner, the masks staring down as if to say, "Patience, son of Ogunlai. The truth will rise like the sun." The weight of shame settled deeper, a test not just of love, but of endurance. Kemi's rebellion bloomed like a weed in the rainy season. She emerged from her room one morning, her lips painted red, her eyes cold as the steel of the city's towers. "I'm not staying in this poor man's house," she declared, her voice slicing through the breakfast silence. Nia's spoon clattered against her plate, but Kemi didn't flinch. She'd already packed a bag, her sights set on a rich boyfriend who'd promised her the life she'd lost. Adebayo watched her go, his heart a drumbeat of sorrow, remembering the girl who'd once danced with him at festivals, her laughter brighter than the masquerade drums. Tolu followed a different path, slipping out at night to join a crew of boys who roamed the streets, their pockets jingling with coins from petty hustles. He returned with bruised knuckles and a scowl, his pride a shield against the father he now blamed. Sada alone remained, her crayons sketching dreams of a family unbroken, her faith in Adebayo a fragile flame in the growing dark. The drift widened, a river cutting through the family's soul. Adebayo wandered the compound, his ragged shirt clinging to his frame, his eyes tracing the paths his children had taken. He passed the mango tree where Tolu once climbed, the porch where Kemi sang, and felt the ancestors' whispers grow louder. "See their hearts, Adebayo. See what wealth has sown." Nia noticed too, her anger turning inward, her nights spent pacing, muttering prayers to the Orishas for strength. One afternoon, she caught Tolu sneaking in, his shirt torn, and slapped him hard. "You shame us more," she cried. But he only glared, the boy she'd raised now a stranger. Adebayo stood silent, his test revealing truths he hadn't braced for his children, raised in luxury, now scattered like seeds on rocky soil. The city hummed beyond the gates, its pulse a reminder of the empire he'd built, now a ghost haunting his every step. Nia's spirit shifted as the weeks wore on, her eyes glinting with a fire Adebayo hadn't seen since their courtship days. She began leaving the compound at dawn, her wrapper tied tight, her steps quick as a gazelle's. She told Adebayo she was finding work, but her hands returned with no calluses, her stories vague as morning mist. He watched her go, his billionaire's instincts tingling, sensing a thread of deceit woven into her resolve. At night, she'd sit by the window, counting coins and scribbling in a small book, her lips moving in silent calculation. Once, he caught her hiding a bundle under the bedcloth, perhaps, or something heavier, and her excuse came too fast. "Just old things to sell." The ancestors' voices murmured in his dreams, warning of a storm brewing, and Adebayo's heart wrestled with trust and doubt. The city offered clues, if one knew where to look. Adebayo trailed Nia one morning, his ragged disguise blending with the market crowds. She slipped into a narrow street, past the yam sellers and tailors, to a shop with a sign reading, "Mama Ngozi's Loans." There, she met a woman with a scar across her cheek, her voice low as she handed Nia a pouch that clinked with promise. Adebayo's breath caught this wife was borrowing, or worse, scheming. He lingered, unseen, as Nia tucked the pouch into her wrapper and hurried home, her face a mask of determination. Back at the compound, she smiled at him, her warmth a thin veil, and said, "Soon we'll rise again." But the words rang hollow, and Adebayo felt the test twist into something to pair a dance of secrets that could break them all. The ancestors, he knew, were watching this thread unravel. Adebayo's days as a beggar grew heavier, the city's scorn a yoke on his shoulders. He took to the streets, his sack now a prop for alms, his voice hoarse as he called for kindness. Passersby tossed coins or curses, their eyes blind to the titan beneath the rags. The market women who'd once praised his name now shooed him like a stray dog, their laughter cutting deeper than hunger. Yet he bore it, each rejection a mirror to his family's drift, each coin a test of his own resolve. At night, he'd sit by the compound's gate, counting the day's meager haul, Sade at his side, her small hands sorting the coins with care. "Papa, why do they hate us?" she asked. Eddie had no answer, only a story of a king who lost his crown to find his heart. The burden grew as Nia's absences stretched longer. She'd return with food yam porridge, fried plantain, but her eyes avoided his, her hands too clean for labor. Tolu came home less, his clothes smelling of smoke, while Kemi's silence from afar was a wound that festered. Adebayo felt the ancestors' presence stronger now, their wisdom a riddle. What is wealth without love? One evening, a masquerade troupe danced past the compound, their drums shaking the earth, their masks a reminder of the spirits watching. Adebayo joined them, his rags swaying, and for a moment he was free until Nia's sharp voice called him back. "Stop this foolishness!" she snapped, and he saw fear in her eyes, not for him, but for something she hid. The beggar's burden was his to carry, but the truth, he knew, was rising like a tide. The neighbors grew bold, their pity turning to mockery. Mama Bose, a stout woman with a tongue sharp as a cutlass, stood at the fence one morning, her voice booming. "See the mighty Ogunlai now, a rat in the gutter," she crowed, her laughter drawing a crowd. Adebayo sat in the courtyard, mending a sandal, his hands steady despite the sting. Nia stormed out, her wrapper flapping, and hurled insults back, but Mama Bose only laughed harder. "Your husband's a beggar, and you're next," she taunted, and the crowd roared. Sade hid behind Adebayo, her tears soaking his shirt, while Nia retreated, her pride a crumbling wall. The city's pulse quickened with the spectacle, and Adebayo felt the ancestors' gaze of shame was a teacher, they seemed to say, but its lesson was bitter. That night, the taunts echoed in Nia's silence. She sat by the shrine, her prayers a whisper, her hands clutching a cowrie shell necklacey, a gift from Adebayo in better days. He approached, his voice soft. "We'll endure," he said. But she turned away, her eyes glinting with something dark, anger, or perhaps a plan. The neighbor's words had lit a fuse, and Adebayo sensed her spirit shifting, her love tested by the fire of humiliation. He lay awake, the city's hum a lullaby, wondering if the ancestors had foreseen this fracture. The taunts were a mirror, reflecting a family on the edge, and the beggar's test was now a tightrope over a chasm. A stranger appeared one afternoon, his suit crisp as a new banknote, his smile wide as the Niger River. He knocked on the compound gate, asking for the man who was once Adebayo Ogunlai. Nia greeted him, her eyes narrowing, while Adebayo watched from the porch, his rags a shield. The man, who called himself Mr. Ize, spoke of opportunity, a job hauling goods at the docks, enough to feed a family. "I heard of your fall," he said, his voice smooth as palm oil. "And I pity a good man brought low." Nia's face lit up, a spark of hope, but Adebayo's gut twisted. Something in Eze's eyes gleamed too bright, too hungry. He accepted the offer, bowing humbly, and Eze promised to return with details. The ancestors whispered caution, their voices a breeze through the mango tree, and Adebayo wondered if this was a test within a test. Nia's mood lifted, her steps lighter as she cooked that night, the scent of egusi soup filling the air. "This could be our way out," she said, her smile tentative, and Sade clapped, her faith renewed. But Adebayo saw the cracks. Nia's eagerness bordered on desperation, her trust in Eze too quick. He trailed the stranger the next day, his beggar's guise perfect, and saw him enter a sleek office tower, laughing with men in suits. Eze wasn't a savior. He was a vulture, circling a family he thought broken. Adebayo's heart sank as test had drawn predators, and Nia's hope was a thread in their web. The city's shadows grew long, and the ancestors' riddle deepened. Who stands when the storm comes? The docks were a furnace, the sun baking Adebayo's skin as he hauled crates, his beggar's strength a lie hiding a titan's endurance. Eze watched, his smile thin, paying Adebayo coins that barely bought bread. Nia counted them each night, her hope fading, her voice sharp. "This isn't enough!" she snapped, and Adebayo saw the storm in her eyes break. She began disappearing again, her excuses flimsy, her pouch from Mama Ngozi heavier each time. Tolu returned one night, drunk and bruised, spitting at Adebayo. "You're nothing now." Kemi sent a letter, cold and final. "I'm not coming back." Sade's drawing stopped, her silence a wound deeper than words. The family teetered, and Adebayo felt the ancestors' way this test had pushed them to the edge. One evening, Nia didn't return. Adebayo waited, the city's hum a dirge, until dawn painted the sky. She stumbled in, her wrapper torn, her eyes wild. "I tried to fix us," she sobbed, collapsing at his feet, a pouch spilling gold coin stolen, he knew, from Easy's men. She'd risked all, not for love, but for pride. And the truth cut Adebayo like a blade. He held her, his rags soaking her tears, and felt the test's climax loom. The ancestors' voices roared, "See her heart, Adebayo. See the cost of your masquerade." Adebayo knew the time had come. He called Chike that morning, his voice steady as he shed the beggar's rags. "Bring it all back," he said, and by noon the compound gate swung wide, trucks rolling in with wealth gold, cash, deeds to his empire. Nia stared, her tears drying, as servants returned, bowing to the man she'd doubted. Tolu froze, his bravado crumbling, while Sade ran to Adebayo, her faith rewarded. Kemi's absence stung, but the city buzzed a new Ogunlai was risen. Adebayo faced Nia, his eyes soft but firm. "I tested you," he said, "to see your heart." The ancestors' wisdom hung heavy. Wealth was a mask. Love the truth beneath. Nia's confession spilled like a river. She'd stolen from Easy to buy back their life, not knowing it was never lost. Her shame bowed her head, but Adebayo lifted her chin. "You fought for us, in your way," he said, and her tears fell again. Tears of relief, not despair. The family stood fractured but alive, and Adebayo knew the test had cost him, yet saved him too. The city watched, its whispers now of awe, and the ancestors smiled. Nia's act lingered in Adebayo's minder theft, her risk, a twisted love. She'd faced Eze's men alone, her wrapper hiding a knife, her heart pounding as she took the gold. She'd meant to rebuild, not knowing the empire stood firm. Her tears now were for the danger she'd braved, the shame she'd borne. Adebayo saw her a Niwa warrior, flawed but fierce. The ancestors' lesson rang clear. Love bends, but does not break. The city hailed Adebayo's return, but Nia's sacrifice was the tale's heart. She stood by him at a festival, her head high, her bangles gleaming, and the crowd cheered not just the billionaire, but the wife who'd fought. Adebayo held her hand, his test complete, his family scarred but stronger. The moral shone bright. True wealth is the heart that endures. Tolu came back, his pride broken, his eyes seeking forgiveness. Adebayo embraced him, the boy's tears a balm. Kemi wrote, her words tentative, promising a visit. Sade never left, her faith, the thread that held them. The family rebuilt, brick by brick, their love tested and tempered. The ancestors' wisdom prevailed. Wealth buys time, but love buys life. The city watched, its markets alive with their tale. Adebayo stood taller, Nia beside him. Their children a circle, incomplete but healing. The test had scarred them, but scars, the ancestors knew, were marks of survival. Adekunle City sang their story, a folk tale for the ages. Adebayo reflected by the shrine, the masks now friends, not judges. His test had revealed greed, fear, and love's quiet strength. Nia's act reckless, yet selfless taught him that loyalty wears many faces. The ancestors' voices sang, "Wealth is a shadow, love the sun." The city thrived, but his family was his true empire. The tale spread, griots weaving it into songs, children acting it in the streets. Adebayo's masquerade became a lesson test, not to break, but to build. Nia's tears, Tolu's return, Sade's faith, they were the gold that mattered. The ancestors nodded, their work done, their wisdom eternal. Years later, Adebayo stood old but strong, Nia at his side, their hair silver as the moon. Tolu led the empire. Kemi returned with a child. Sade taught the tale to her own. The city crowned them legends, their test a beacon. The ancestors' gift was clear. Love not gold, endures. Adekunle City grew, its towers taller, its markets louder, but the Ogunlai story lived on. Adebayo's test, Nia's cry, they were the heartbeat of a folk tale that taught family is the root, wealth the rain. The end came with a sunset, the family whole, the ancestors proud.